There's a car parked in a driveway somewhere right now that hasn't run in over a year. The paint has gone dull, the check engine light has been on so long nobody remembers what set it off. And the person who owns it will tell you with a completely straight face that they're getting around to fixing it. Everyone around them rolls their eyes. Nobody quite understands why they won't just let it go. These are the people who refuse to sell their first car. Not because it's worth anything, not because it's practical, because somewhere along the way a piece of metal and rubber stopped being a machine and became a piece of them. Picture this. You're 17, sitting in the driver's seat for the first time as the legal owner of something. Your hands are on the wheel before the engine even starts, just to feel what it's like to hold it. You pull out of the dealership lot or off your parents' street, and for the first time in your life, nobody is in the passenger seat telling you where to go. In car-dependent places, this moment functions almost like a rite of passage, the same way other cultures mark adulthood with a ceremony. There's no ritual, no audience, just an empty road and a strange new feeling of being the one in charge. Psychologists who study what's called self-continuity, the sense that your past self and present self are the same person moving through time, have found that people hold on to objects from formative moments specifically because those objects help stitch their identity together across the years. So when someone refuses to sell that car, they're not clinging to a vehicle. They're protecting the thread that connects who they are now to who they were the day they became someone new. Picture this. They haven't sat in that car in years, and then one day they do, just to check the battery, and the smell hits them before anything else. Old vinyl, a little bit of stale coffee, whatever air freshener they used to buy from the gas station. Suddenly, they're not in a driveway anymore. They're 17 again, windows down, a song playing that they haven't thought about in a decade. This is what researchers call odor-evoked memory, sometimes nicknamed the Proust effect, after the novelist who described the exact same thing happening with a piece of cake. Smell is wired directly into the part of the brain that handles emotion and memory, more directly than any other sense. It doesn't ask permission, it just pulls you under. People who experience this strongly aren't being dramatic. They simply have an unusually vivid internal archive, and that car happens to be one of the keys to it. Picture this. The car is struggling up a hill, engine groaning, and without thinking, they say out loud, "Come on, you can do it." Friends in the car laugh. They don't even notice they've said it until someone points it out. This habit of talking to the car, patting the dashboard when it starts on a cold morning, has a name too. It's called anthropomorphism, and researchers who study it have found it isn't a sign of confusion about what's alive and what isn't. It's actually linked to a strong capacity for empathy. The same mental machinery that lets you imagine what a stranger is feeling is the machinery that lets you imagine a car has a personality. People who do this aren't disconnected from reality, they have an active, generous imagination, and the car just happens to be where it spills out. Picture this. A friend or parent pulls up a spreadsheet, repair costs versus trade-in value. The math doesn't make sense, and they know it doesn't make sense, and they still say no. This is where economists would point to something called the endowment effect, the well-documented tendency for people to value something more highly simply because they own it. But there's more going on here than irrational math. We live in a culture built around upgrading, where cars are leased for 3 years and swapped out before the new car smell even fades. Refusing to participate in that cycle, even when it costs more to fix the old one than replace it, is a quiet rebellion against a world that treats almost everything, and sometimes almost everyone, as disposable. What looks like stubbornness is actually loyalty, in a culture that rarely asks for any. Picture this. They remember exactly where they were parked the night they got the phone call that changed everything, or the seat they were sitting in when they cried for the first time in front of someone. For a lot of people, especially as teenagers, the car is one of the only truly private spaces they ever had. No siblings, no parents, no roommates, just 4 doors and a lock. Psychologists describe how memory often attaches itself to context, to the physical place where an emotional event happened, which is why returning to that place can bring the whole feeling rushing back. The car isn't just a backdrop to those memories, it's a witness. The attachment isn't to the metal, it's to the only room that ever let them fall apart in peace. Picture this. They're driving past a junkyard, or they see a tow truck hauling away some stranger's beat-up old sedan, and they feel an unexpected lump in their throat. They never even met the owner. It's not their car, but watching it go still stings a little. Nostalgia researchers have found that this feeling can be triggered by objects we never personally owned, simply because they represent an era, a way of life that's quietly disappearing. People who feel this strongly aren't being oversensitive. They're tuned into the passage of time in a way most people learn to numb themselves to just to get through the day. Picture this. At a family dinner, somebody finally says it out loud. You really should just get something newer. They smile, change the subject, and go back to eating. This isn't about money, and it isn't about being impractical. Psychologists draw a distinction between things we do because we genuinely value them and things we do to look a certain way to other people. Holding onto a car nobody else understands the appeal of is about as far from status-driven as it gets. There's no applause for keeping a 20-year-old hatchback running. People who do it anyway have simply decided that their own sense of meaning matters more than anyone else's approval, which, quietly, is one of the harder things a person can learn to do. And picture this, last one. They're cleaning out the glove box and find an old parking stub, a gas receipt from a price that doesn't exist anymore, handwriting on the back of a napkin nobody remembers writing. It feels less like clutter and more like evidence. Consumer psychologists have a term for this, the extended self, the idea that the things we own become quiet extensions of our own identity, holding pieces of us we'd otherwise forget. That glove box isn't junk, it's an archive nobody asked them to keep, but they kept it anyway. Here's the part that doesn't quite add up though. These same people are often ruthless about everything else. They'll clear out a closet without blinking, end the friendship that's run its course without a second thought, move across the country and never look back. They are not in any general sense sentimental hoarders, which is exactly why this one exception is so telling. If they kept everything, you could write it off as a personality trait, but they don't keep everything. They kept this, which means it was never really about the stuff at all. It was about the one object that marked the exact moment they became themselves. Eventually, most of these cars do go, to a scrapyard, to a stranger on a classifieds app, to a tow truck on a day they finally run out of reasons to say not yet. Nobody throws a parade for them when it happens. Nobody understands why they sit in the driver's seat one last time before handing over the keys. Engine off, just listening to the quiet. But maybe that's the whole point. Some people mark the passage of time with photographs. Others mark it with a car that got them through every version of who they used to be and held on long after it should have, simply because letting go felt like agreeing that those years were over. It isn't really about the car. It never was. It's about refusing to forget who you were before you knew who you'd become. If you've ever felt a strange pull towards something everyone else thinks you should have given up by now, you're not as alone in that as it feels. We dig into the psychology behind moments like this every week, so if this one landed, stick around. It means a lot.